Start all over.
What happened?
Thank you for tuning
Go
in for this edition of
ahead.
Justice Watch with
Oh, there you
attorney
go.
Zulu Ali. I'm attorney Zulu Ali with the Justice Watch crew, Rosa Nunez, Michael Bilal Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Andrea Rodeman. This week, like every week, we'll be discussing critical legal and social justice issues that are impacting our community. This week, the subject is the shooting of the young man by the name of Ralph Yarl in Kansas City, Missouri. He was shot by an elderly white male by the name of Andrew Lester. He was 84 years old. So, what happened in this incident? Ralph, or Mr. Yorl, I guess, the 16-year-old teen was supposed to pick up his younger twin brothers from a friend's house on 115th Terrace, but went to 115th Street by mistake. The mother had asked Ralph to pick them up at 10 p.m. He didn't have his phone with him, but he went to the wrong address. When he rang the doorbell, he was supposed to had stayed outside, but his brothers were supposed to run outside and get in the car to come home. And while he was standing there, the man inside took a long time, but finally opened the interior door, holding a firearm. Yarl said he was shot in the head, fell to the ground, and was shot a second time in the arm. Then he said he got up and ran away. He had actually went to some other places, I think maybe some neighbors' houses or something like that, and then they wouldn't nobody help him. That's my understanding, right?
Yeah.
And I mean that's just tragic. And it seemed like it had taken him some time actually to initiate charges against the gentleman or the male, I guess I should say, that actually shot him. It wasn't swift. I know that the police department was kind of reluctant to charge him immediately. I know that the prosecutor had said that he felt like this was a situation that was racially motivated. Um, and so there we are. I mean, that's the question. So you got an 84-year-old gentleman who gets a knock at the door by a young 16-year-old male, and says that he was of course, the same adage, you're going to say, well, he was fearful for his life. I mean, of course, he was behind the door, first of all. Second of all, he wasn't, I think he first described um, the teen as being 6 foot tall, which I don't believe. I mean, the reports say that he was not really that big. He was a smaller teen. If you've seen pictures of him,
Yeah.
you can see that he was a relatively small stature person, which to the extent that it really matters, I don't think it really matters how big he is. I just think that because in his head he saw a black male, he probably thought that he was, you know, big. I guess I don't know what it is, but again, going back to this whole idea of this fear, I know that the shooter, he had a grandson. I think it was his grandson that has been actually coming out and speaking out about the incident, and basically extended apologies on behalf of on behalf of the shooter's family about what had happened. And he also believed that it was racially motivated, because he says that his grandfather was basically had those issues, had that kind of, racist sentiment, and that he was probably had been listening, not probably, but had been listening to all the, Fox News and different news outlets that he had been listening to that kind of spewed all that hate. And, he said he really didn't agree with his grandfather's paradigm that he, in basically, in essence, described as being, racist. And then, what you have is, obviously he's going to assert the defense of self-defense and stand your ground, which people are, I mean, of course he's going to make he's going to assert the defense. I think whether it's going to be successful is obviously a different story, but clearly if you're being charged like he's being charged, and that's what you get. I think initially what people were concerned about was the fact that he was charged with I believe in the state of Missouri, the charge would have been some sort of assault charge,
Hmm.
felonious assault charge, um, which I mean, I think initially people were concerned about why he wasn't charged with um, um, attempted murder. However, my
Right.
understanding that the way that that particular charge is written for that particular for the state of Missouri, they're pretty much the same the same. It's first degree assault is what it's called, and a first degree assault I think is supposed to be akin to an attempted murder charge, which clearly he should be charged with attempted murder, especially the fact that he initially shot him, and then when the child fell, then he went and he also, shot the child while he was on you know, the ground the second time, and shot him in the arm, shot him in the head. And it's amazing, that the kid is still living,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
they say that he is, progressing in a way in which I don't think that people were expecting,
Hmm.
to get better. In fact, they said that the president had called him, and I think he's actually speaking. If I'm right,
Hmm.
wasn't he talking
Yeah.
to the president or something like
Yeah.
that? So, I mean, the question is going to be, um, you had a lot of protesting. You had a lot of people that were very concerned about, um, I don't know, the lack or injustice. Um, and so, one of the things that did kind of, catch me or caught me in this situation was the fact that, and I'm trying to look and see exactly how much his bail was for this
I
charge.
think it was it 200,000 or something?
Yeah, he had a
Yeah.
$200,000 talking, but in a state like California, he would have never got. I mean, there's people with non-violent cases in the state of California that have no bail.
Hmm.
Right.
You know, it's amazing how, yeah, his bond was set at $200,000 for something like, for such a heinous, crime like this. And I know sometimes when you're talking about, two different states, but then when you think about the state of California, for example, you would think that it would be a little bit more, because you would think that Missouri probably is considered to be a little bit more conservative, or maybe a lot more conservative than the state of California. But regardless, in the state of California, he would have been. Well, I don't know. Again, if it was an African American, I should say, then more likely than not, it would have been well into the millions of dollars as far as the bail is
Hmm.
concerned, if he had a bail at all.
Yeah.
Um, and so, does it, or is it overkill to use this as a way of addressing the bigger issue of the criminal justice system? Because I mean, he was arrested, he was ultimately charged, and would probably, with what is, at least my understanding, is probably one of the most serious charges he could have gotten under the circumstances. So, is there any? Is it? What is the debate? Is the debate that we live in a society where where young black men are just being killed and
Hmm.
attacked by people just simply because of the color of their skin,
Hmm.
right?
I think that's the issue.
Is that the issue?
Yeah, I think that's the issue. Even when you go back to when you were saying, as far as like once he ran
Mm.
and he got away, and I've read on
Get it
several
closer.
reports, that there was someone who opened their door, but when they opened their door for him, they made him put his hands over his head while
Yes.
he laid on the ground.
Mm.
Yep.
My question is, okay, so you're talking about, and I'm just being devil's advocate right now. I'm being devil's advocate. Um, do we have? I mean, we're protesting the clearly the wrongful treatment of a young black man, a young black teen, by a man who just basically shot him. And obviously, we're expecting the wheels of justice to convict this man and give him the maximum sentence that they could possibly give him. That's what we're expecting, right?
Mhm.
That's what we're hoping for.
Well, the question is going to be the reaction of this man and maybe his neighbors. What do we expect out of racist civilians, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are we protesting that racist civilians are treating our young men this way when in fact the he was arrested and he was charged? I mean, I'm trying to figure out, how do you change? Are we wasting our time trying to change the sentiment of ignorant, fearful people in this country? How are we going to change that? Is that really? So the thing is, we make sure we keep our foots on the neck of the prosecutor and the police chief for
Mhm.
sure, right?
Mhm.
But when it comes to the issue of civilians and the way in which they act, how do we change that sentiment? And is it really worth changing? Does that make sense?
Mhm. I think
I mean,
go ahead,
Huh?
Rosa.
I think to your point, it's systematic. It's
Right.
deep biases that have been entrenched in this country from the foundation of this nation. And changing the heart of these people means changing the bias that has been just prominent in our country for centuries. I think these people are only symptoms in their actions of a bigger issue.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it has to start somewhere, and holding people accountable for these actions will make the next person think twice about doing something. I mean, you have a kid that walks up to the door, and then you just fire him just the simple fact that he walked up and rang the doorbell and asked for his siblings. You look at it and you say, let's say that it was a white kid to walk up there. I doubt very seriously if he would have put a gun on him and started shooting. He probably would have, entertained the question or whatever. But I think that people need to start being held accountable. And I think the racist sentiment in that particular area, by even after the fact that he was shot, that the neighbor asked him to raise his hand, instead of trying to administer some type of help to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or try to assist him. You make a man. I mean, that's equivalent to the police shooting, how we've seen several times, the police shooting individuals in, once they shot 15 and 20 times, still letting them lay on the ground with handcuffs on.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so that has to be changed. And the only way it's going to be changed is people have to learn that, look, you're going to be held accountable for these actions. But I think that at some point in time, too, not only should they be held accountable for they should sue them as well to make sure that they don't have nowhere to go to live.
Well, definitely they're going to sue him, but this is the question. Why don't we be as outraged anytime
Mhm.
a teenage kid is shot by somebody? No matter where they are,
color and everything.
wherever they come. I mean, we have a crisis of violence in this country that oftentimes begins by, what about self-hate?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Right.
Yeah.
What if every time there's violence against young black men, right? Because we know that we're not talking about perpetrators. We're talking about the fact that we're often victims of this thing. What if the same participants, the same suspects, I shouldn't use that word, but the usual suspects that come out and get this type of attention, why don't we do that every time?
We should.
And the thing is that whenever because it happens too much,
Right.
where young men are they're killed, unarmed young men are killed all the time, and we should have it. Why don't we have the same intensity? We have a whole show. We have, these people coming out of the wood. Now, let's just say the young man went to the wrong house and was shot by somebody that was black.
Mm-hmm.
Would we still be here talking like this?
I don't think so.
Would
Not to the same
the
degree, I
same attorneys come out and the same people come out and
No.
say with the same intensity and the same protesting?
Nope. I don't think
No.
so.
Why not?
And I'm saying I don't believe so. And here's the thing. And this is not to make any excuses, but I think that in our culture, there's two things that black on black crime has become so normalized, for
Yeah.
one. And then for the other thing is, I believe that there's a fear of retaliation because we heard this many times, especially when it's coming to with gangs and stuff like that. Now, does this make it acceptable? No, because I think a community should come out in every case where a young person is shot and killed over gang violence or whatever it is. I think there should be massive protests, and then those individuals be held accountable just as well, because that's the only way we're going to accept the example for that not happening anymore as well.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, we have to do a lot when it comes to, I mean, clearly we have a crisis, and we kind of know really, I mean, the one thing is that basically the way that this person is being treated with regards to, it should have been more swift. It should have been no question. And hopefully he will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And we're talking about the fact that we do need, because two things can be true. I mean, clearly we do have a race issue in this country that, unfortunately, because he happened to be a young black man, that probably he would have never gotten shot in that particular scenario. And they probably would have, and then also the way that they treat him when they wanted to, my understanding is that they wanted to look into his system to see whether he had any type of substances in his system, such as drugs or alcohol or anything like that. But, which, obviously, I don't know if they would have done that with somebody else, because I think that they were probably looking at ways to potentially justify the acts, justify the act. But I do want to also say that what's also equally true is, is it fair for those mothers who have lost their children to violence, senseless violence, right? For why don't we talk? What about them? What about those grieving mothers? What about their justice?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And we don't act like that when it comes to that. I mean, I know we talk about, and you mentioned the fact that there's retaliation and that sort of thing. But I mean, we have to change. Part of it is, what am I going to do about any of this? Am I going to get on a bandwagon because it's basically it's if it bleeds, it feeds. It's a great news story. Everybody sees it. It's sexy. Media wise, you got a black kid and an older white man, and race sells, and everybody is in on it. And it's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, so people are using it, they're pimping. It's media pimping to a certain extent.
It is.
But at the same time, what about the hard case? It's like politicians. Why don't politicians come out? I'm sure that you'll hear a lot of politicians coming out just simply because it's a national story. But what about all these local stories where you have these young men that are being killed on a daily basis and being injured and their lives are being in danger. And we don't really we don't do as much as we should in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And we should. I mean, the violence is just, it's way off the hook right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the same thing goes with, now what I will say is, do I believe that the fact that the people who perpetrate these things with the criminal justice system, they are treated differently based upon the color of their skin?
Mm-hmm.
The courts and the prosecutors do treat perpetrators differently. You know what I mean? So in other words, we might have not been out here protesting, but I can assure you that person would have been arrested immediately and probably would have had a bail higher than $200,000 if they happened to have been black.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as opposed to this gentleman who's an elderly, but it wouldn't have made any difference had they would immediately went. And just think about this. What if it was a white kid that would have gotten shot by an elderly 84-year-old black man? What would they have done? How quickly do you think that arrest would have been made? It would have not been days before the arrest would have been made. The arrest would have been made immediately.
Mm-hmm.
They would have arrested and asked questions later.
Mm-hmm.
However, whenever the scenario is different, they ask questions first and then they make arrests later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's really system wide. And I can tell you this, and this is what I can tell you, is that it is system wide because it goes across when it comes to the criminal justice system. And when I'm talking about the actors within the criminal justice system, generally it don't matter. It don't matter whether the judge is black. It don't matter whether the prosecutor is black. It doesn't matter what. Generally, oftentimes that really doesn't matter, but it should matter. And we should have. I mean, you know, we have to change the way we deal with stuff altogether all the way across the board.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I'm you know me, I'm going to go in on it if I think race is a part of the issue, because it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if I'm going to really, am I doing this in order to garner someone to like what I'm saying? I'm just going to tell the truth. We have to do more about policing up our own folks and how we deal with it.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? Because I stay very, and I think we all do, if we want to tell the truth, because that's like the dirty little secret, right? That we need to make sure that how we deal with each other.
Yeah.
And the thing is that basically the same intensity that we have, and that intensity should be strong, that we put on the system and the way it treats our people. We should have the same intensity when it comes to ourselves, because we do some really, you know, it's like, it's so bad that a lot of black folks don't even deal with black folks.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
We don't even deal with each other, and you know what I mean. And so, you know, and that's and when you, it's not like if you say, okay, I happen to be, you happen to be a black person, and you have a black prosecutor and a black judge. Is that going to make the playing field more equal?
No.
Huh?
I don't think so.
Or you feel like, would you be just as nervous? Would you say, oh, I got a black prosecutor and I got a black judge, so I think that I'm going to get a fair shake? I mean, would you feel that way?
You can think that way, but that, I mean, you know, me knowing.
Subconsciously, you might think, but in reality, it means nothing.
I might be a little more nervous because I might think, oh, they got something to prove to, you know, the other man, so they might try to get me just to get some points.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I said last week, low hanging fruit.
Low hanging fruit.
And that goes away across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it's we need to have, we don't have that discussion.
Yeah.
Why don't we hear that? We say, okay, we don't discuss the race enough in America. We don't talk about it enough. It's a problem, and we don't talk about it enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's across the board because we have to figure out a lot of the. I mean, in other words, at some point in time, we can't blame the white man for everything.
Correct.
Yes.
I mean, you can't. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, there's enough blame to go around.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is that, that's the first thing that came to my mind when I seen that a young black man, before the whole race thing came to my head, to be honest with you, when I saw him and I seen a young black man that was shot, my first thing is that I'm so sick and tired of these young black men. They're unsafe. They're unsafe in our own community, right? And they're unsafe when they go to somebody else's community.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, it's just like, if I can, when I need to come out and I need to be as vocal when it comes to so-and-so's, like if this was a elderly black man that killed a young black man, those same people wouldn't be out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
And what do you say? What the news media is not going to be out there. What about that mother? Huh?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So that's the thing, is that we need to start thinking about the violence. There's so many things, the violence that we have and the hatred that we have for each other.
Correct.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's the unspoken, and that's the unspoken word. That's what we don't talk about.
We've been programmed for a long time. You ever watched? I was just watching it earlier today. It was the experiment they did with those kids, and they were talking about how the dark doll was bad and ugly, and the white doll was good and pure and stuff like that. And I had an incident, and I consider myself, I'm not anti anybody, but I'm very pro black, and I think everyone should be pro who they are. But I had an incident in my 20s when I had my first apartment, and they came to put my furniture to deliver my furniture. And it was these two black guys. They came into my apartment. I was by myself. And I didn't realize that I had some unconscious stuff in my head. My heart was just racing. I'm in there by myself with these two individuals. And, they young cats or whatever. But I was nervous. And I was like, why am I nervous? They're not doing, they're being polite. Why am I nervous as my own brothers in here helping me with my stuff? So fast forward, a piece had broken off or something. I had to call the place for someone to come back and fix my furniture. Two young white boys came. I had no fear, no nothing. And I checked myself in because I cried about that. And I was like, where's that coming from? Why do I think that they would even think to do something to me as opposed to protect me? But here comes these two white guys who more than likely are higher likely to possibly think badly about me or want to do something to me, and I have no fear. Where is that? And I checked myself, and I was in my early 20s, and that's when I realized something's not right. Something's not right, because I'm not even like that. But we've been programmed since at an early age unconsciously, and it's something that I don't know how we can get rid of that. I don't know how we can get rid of that.
It could be. There's ways to get. There's ways for us to do that, but we don't. We really don't focus. We focus sometimes on the wrong thing, and some of the programming goes with, everybody feels like they have the monopoly on the black card as far as black people are concerned. We oftentimes feel that way, but I think the way that we have to, start dealing with it and really addressing it is internalized racism is a real thing.
Yeah.
And internalized racism goes across this whole spectrum, including all paradigms, regardless of how pro-black somebody says that they are. And sometimes that is where it comes. It's like, for example, someone who says, like if someone sees look how many times pro-black people dog out black folks. They spend I mean, how many YouTube videos do we see where you got black folks telling other black folks the way they supposed to live and who they supposed to be with and how you supposed to act, and you're supposed to be like this and you supposed to be like me. And like we're this monolithic people who all act a particular way, and we spend all this time trying to do just some things that in my head don't even make any sense. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so to me, I think that the conversation has to be had, but I mean, I you don't want to get me started, because I can tell you that they can do some wild stuff, and that's why a lot of times when people get out of the hood, they don't turn around and look back.
Correct.
Because they realize that as you go on, you feel like when you have your own people doing certain things to you, right? Yeah. Then you all of a sudden feel like, you don't want to look back. You want to feel, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, we just like some of like arguments and going off on people and saying, why did he do this and why did he do? I mean, we got the black police everywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The black police telling everybody how they're supposed to be black. You know what I mean? And then when they don't fit that criteria, then we begin to start, as far as, you get to a certain level, and then who's happy for you? Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And a lot of times it's just not, that's crazy. But I don't want to get too far off on that particular subject, but reeling it back into what we're talking about in this particular case. It does bring up that thought process, and nobody has really said that. And then you're going to get scrutinized because you bring up that issue.
Yeah. But
because it is a real issue. And sometimes you're scared that they might check you because you're telling that means, but it is what it is, man.
Exactly. And that's the reason why we still in the condition that we're in, because it's like you say, it's taboo. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to address the issues. So until we address the issues, we're still going to have those same issues. I mean, you can equate it to programming or whatever you want, but I'm more conscious of where I choose to get gas from. But that's just me. There's certain places that I would not stop to go get gas, and it's in the community where my people reside, and that's because of where I came from, being involved with gangs and stuff like that. I have to safeguard myself, and I have to safeguard my family. That doesn't mean that I'm brainwashed or anything like that. That's just on the side of caution.
Caution, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of things that we're not willing to admit, black folks and white folks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that we don't want to admit when it comes to certain things involving, us, and a lot of what we understand where it comes. A lot of it does obviously come from, the psychosis that we've experienced as people in this country. But the psychosis came, there's always been this, we were put in a very awkward and unusual situation. And the awkwardness and the unusual situation is the fact that, we for many of us, I mean, the conflict between us was how they were able to enslave us to begin with on the continent. You know what I mean? So there was already turmoil and fighting on the continent, and they exploited that. You know what I mean? And so, and then as you come and you look at the history of this country and you start looking at things such as COINTELPRO, even when you talk about slavery itself, they use that tactic even on the plantation of trying to, create and illuminate the differences. And then as you go in, there were federal agencies such as COINTELPRO who basically infiltrated organizations that were built for the purpose of trying to deprogram us. Those organizations were infiltrated with the purpose of creating conflict, right?
Yeah.
And so now, we go inside, so for, that is a history of our of our existence on this continent, of that whole conflict. It was created. And then when you start looking at, even as we talk even today, I mean, they still love the guy who's willing to go tell on the field Negro,
Yeah.
right? They still like you. So in other words, if I say, for example, if I have a discussion on how they treat us in our community, then there are people who are going to love to hear that truth. But when I talk about the fact of the other truth of being how we treat each other, then that sparks interest in other people, because then it's just like for example, what happened with this kid. There's people out there that would say, "Hey, yeah, they kill each other every day, and they don't say nothing about that."
Oh yeah,
you see what I'm saying? They're scared of their own people, so of course he's going to be scared, right?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So and that's kind of how we continue to play it, because we're dishonest. As a society, we're very dishonest about how this criminal justice system is being used, and we got more people in prisons than any other country in the world.
Yeah.
We got more guns that per capita than any other country in the world.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Because we are a society that tends to thrive on conflict, fear, and violence.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of
to divide and conquer.
Right. I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, it's just like, as long as you got the common folk fighting with each other, then they feel they're going to be secure, and we're just too stupid to realize it.
Yeah.
And even to your point of the way that they phrase these mass shootings, right?
Right.
They could have easily phrased it, the media per se. It was a young boy killed at the hands of an adult. That brings unity across races, ethnicities, and ages. But they know that the race card, that anything like that, works on us. Because we cannot come together to find a solution for the mass shootings happening in this country when we stay at the bottom fighting each other because we're different in color.
It is definitely, I mean, it's huge. I mean, as far as like it is taking the attention of the whole black-white issue of this situation is really the story. They don't care about a young, because like I said, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 10-year-olds get killed all the time.
Yeah.
Nobody really pays any attention to it. So oftentimes, and that goes back to, selling stories.
Yes.
It's not a story that you can sell. It's not like, for example, how many people are going to listen to us when it comes to controversial issues? You're going to get people to listen to you. That's why you have controversial topics. Your whole topic has to be controversial to get someone to listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? If it's something that we should hear, if I said, "Hey, I'm going to do a story on how we should come together and do better," or you know what I'm saying, we're going to have this. Nobody wants to hear that story.
Nobody wants to hear it. No.
But if I say, all I need to do is just make sure that I have that topic in there and people are really ready to listen to it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok.
Yeah. But it's also how we're painted in the media. The media is the biggest corporate of it all, because it's how they paint us and how they make us seem. I mean, you can take someone like, we used to go back to the jury, and the people that sits on the jury, they've never lived in the African American community in their life. So the thing about it is, they can only go on what they see in the news media or what they see on TV, and their perception of us is all what they seen on TV.
Right. And
so it's just like the individual that did this, the first thing I've heard was there was a string of burglaries in the neighborhood. And so he responded because there was a string of burglaries in the neighborhood. But we know that's not the case. They were just setting the groundwork to try to get him off.
Right.
But that's what happens. Like they wanted to test his blood for drugs. Come on, man. Whenever it comes to us, there's always that issue where we have to paint this person as being someone evil. But now it comes out that this was an honor roll student. This is a student that was a musician doing all of this. But then you go back to the mass shooter that shot all the people up in the school. Oh, she was good. She had all of these good grades and this and that. She wasn't painted as someone that was bad. And even if I can call her a she, because that's being distorted as of right now. But you get the picture,
But the question is, okay, so as Doc you saw it say, what we gonna do about it?
You know what? We just got to keep on. We got to keep on talking. We got to keep on doing what we're doing to try to make that, or try to set that example, or try to speak out against it as much as we can. If we can do the footwork, we do the footwork. But by whatever means we can to try to change it, we must do it. Because if we don't, all we're gonna do is just sit in the stoops and do what everybody else doing, sitting on their couch and not doing nothing.
Yeah.
So what do we do?
I don't think we should. I don't think, even though it to look at it, it can make you really discouraged. However, I think just like with anything, like I tell my kids, always, hope for and expect for and fight for the best outcome, but be prepared for the worst. And I think that's the thing that we need to do, because just like you said, like, number one, if you can dehumanize and take away the innocence of, like, for example, when they talk about young Black kids or, getting harmed or whatever, if you notice, they may not always say, adults, but they'll say, it's different when you say, okay, young Black male. That can be anything. Black male, it could be 20 years old or whatever. They'll use the same term, young Black male, as opposed to this young boy was killed brutally. You have to dehumanize, take away their innocence. I don't know how we can change that, because verbiage.
We can.
Verbiage can paint pictures. We can't.
Can. I mean, and this is why we can't. The why we can is because we're not being honest with ourselves.
Right.
And the reason why we're not being honest with ourselves is because we're not doing enough.
Yeah.
We're not doing enough. When I say, I'm going to say that it begins with us right here. We're not doing enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're not. We're talking and we're saying things, and like everybody else, we're on social media. We're saying everything. I mean, it's like everybody knows it.
Yeah.
We have not said anything today that don't nobody know.
Right.
But the reality of it is that we're not doing enough.
Yes.
And that's the whole issue. That's where the frustration comes in, because we're not always. I mean, it's just like you hear. It makes no sense. We need to actually go out and actually do more.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of and that's the reason why 2 or 3 years down the road, you're going to hear the same rhetoric.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What I heard 4 years ago, let's say George Floyd, listen to Malcolm talk about police brutality.
Yeah.
It's almost like the same thing.
Yeah.
That you can hear today.
Correct.
It's exactly,
because everybody has opinions are like back ends.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has one.
Yeah.
And we're always talking, and nobody does something unless it happens to them. And that's the problem with people.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's the problem with people. If you ask the average, everybody's always like, my grandfather used to tell me as a kid, he says, whatever you do, son, don't grow up and be one of them I'm gonna people. Because we always gonna do something.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't never really do it. We always gonna do something. We always, behind the keyboard, we always, doing whatever, but are we really gonna move? We always preoccupied with things that we shouldn't be preoccupied with.
Mm-hmm.
And we ride the coattails of people who are doing the work, but do we really go out and do what we supposed to do?
No, we
There's
don't.
all, and we always are looking for. I mean, it's like sometimes even with our, everybody, I guess to some extent is, um, you know, or is selfish, and have self interest in the things that they do.
Hmm.
But you know, until we get to a point where we have to sometimes, we take.
Hmm.
But have we, and somebody put us in this privileged position.
Yeah.
And for those people who put us in this privileged position, what have we done? What have we really done based upon those who put us in this privileged position? Have we really given back the way that we should? Can
No.
we really do more?
We can
And
really
we don't.
we can really do more, but I think people are scared. I think people are very afraid of sacrifice. They're afraid of what people have that came before them and seen the examples that they set, but as well. But at the same time, they seen that they had to sacrifice something in order for that change to come about. And I think a great majority of the people are scared for that sacrifice.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah, and I think we're too comfortable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This week, I was in Georgia with my coworkers.
Mhm.
We visited MLK's home where he grew up at. Walking through those streets, just seeing quotes of his various talks plastered on brick walls, talking about what it takes to be able to start a movement like that, right?
Mhm.
While we were there, a few kids just shouted, "Why are we here? We don't care about these."
Right.
Really?
And it's that question. And at the end of the tour, there was a question said, will there be another MLK?
Hmm.
And that whole experience was just so reflective of the fact that we have lived in a time with so much peace that we have become comfortable
Yep.
in this peace.
Mhm.
So much so that we have become talking figures of the people who we didn't want to become talking figures to, because we're only scratching the surface by talking about the issues.
Hmm.
Right.
But I
That's-
think for this type of change, it's going to take a collective, a body of people to come together. We and
Yeah.
not no one leader, no two leaders, because that's not going to work. Everybody has to be leaders
Yeah.
within themselves, and as a collective body, address these issues as a whole. Because until that time happens, it's not going to happen because there's too many people, like I say, that is scared of the sacrifice.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, you're
Right.
right.
and then there's those people who saying, "Well, I don't mind sacrificing, but if I drop this flag, who's gonna pick it up behind me?" You know, we deal with that all day long. People are scared to sacrifice. You know, I put myself out there. I'm conscious of everything I do every day because in the back of my mind is if I do this, what's going to be the consequences of whether my kids going to follow me behind me?
Yeah.
Is they going to pick up that flag or somebody else is going to pick up flag, or I'm just leaving them as being fatherless?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's a lot, man. I mean, and again, I just go back to, you know, we, it's human being. I mean, it's a hard issue because at some level, it's human. It's a human thing. And when I think about the disappointment of human beings, because we romanticize a lot of things, and sometimes it's not legitimate. We assume that it's just something that is in America, but it's not.
Mm-mm.
It's all across the world
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you have people who are just we're almost like, and I think I used this analogy before, like the wild kingdom, where you see
Yeah.
people prey on each other.
Mhm.
And I mean,
Yeah.
people do some unbelievable and crazy things. I think in America it manifests itself a lot differently than it does in some places, because in some places it's even more blatant.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about it on this. I'm talking about sometimes even on the continent.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is a human issue. But on the same token, when you think about what's annoying is the fact that it's not like we're visitors. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
We're not
Mhm.
visitors. I mean, we built this piece.
Yeah.
Right.
And so when you're thinking about the fact that and built it in a way in which probably contributed, I would go as far as saying we contributed more than anybody else. And I believe that wholeheartedly.
Mhm.
And so, so now we're vested.
Mhm.
And no matter what anybody else says, yes, we're vested. You know what I mean? I'm not going to, don't tell me I built the house and it's my house. I built it.
Mhm.
But on the same token, I feel like there's so many different layers to it. Then I also understand why that is. I understand why the system was created the way that it is, because it is jealousy.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I mean, it is a lot of jealousy, especially when it comes to us
Yeah.
and seeing our progress and seeing our success. Right.
Mhm.
So we have that layer. And so again, so now that you realize that when they see our self-destruction, then they don't have the same intensity when it comes to dealing with us, because then you're on your own.
Mhm.
Right? Then all of a sudden it becomes, you deal with your own community. It's not an American problem.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But then when it affects them, then it's an American problem, and they expect us to be involved in everybody else's stuff.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But then when we have something that we need to deal with,
We on our own.
then you
Yeah.
don't see that. You see what I mean?
Correct.
So, we kind of like roll with that.
Yeah.
Is it time? I don't know, man. I think we still got another 3 minutes, don't we? All right.
He's
At any
still
rate,
in minutes
thank you.
already?
Huh?
He over there still in minutes.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you for tuning in for this edition of Justice Watch. We'll see you next week, same time, same place, same channel. And until that time, stay blessed.
KCAA Radio, Loma Linda, where no listener is ever